Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. Thanks for staying with us. We continue with today's conversation on the latest social issue touching on the boy child, the men population in society. Are they equipped enough to handle the life's responsibilities? And if not, what exactly needs to be done? In studio, I'm joined by Rosemary Kinuthia from Africa Boy Child, Kagwe Kibugu, who is a mental health advocate and quite vocal about boy child issues, and Simon Bevy, who's the founder of Man Enough, joining us via way of Zoom. So let's continue with the conversation. Rosemary, before the break, we just heard of the ideal scenario, the roles of men in society. But then the next logical question would be, are they empowered to actually achieve these roles? Is the necessary, perhaps legislative roles put in place in terms of laws and policies? And on the flip side, is there concerted effort to make sure this is achieved?
I think for me, I would look at it differently. Because one, a man is a human being to start with. A man is not a machine. You cannot be looking at men in reference to something. You cannot be looking at a man in reference to his ability to provide. You cannot be looking at men in reference to their ability to protect. That man is a human being who needs also to be looked at as a human being. Even a car goes for service, and if you don't take it for service, it knocks. So I'm looking at it in terms of before the man is given all these responsibilities that maybe are God-given, what is it that is inside of him? At what time will we ever stand and say, let us look at this man as a human being? What support does he need as a human being? And not a reference to. Does he take care of his health? Is there self-motivation in what he does? Does he look, is there self-love? Does he have self-love? Those are things that will actually affirm this man to be able to do the things that are expected of him. And hardly does the society look at a man as a human being, but as a reference to others. You are a man because you are able to provide. You are a man because you are able to protect. At what time do we stand and say, does this man, what is the status of this man in terms of mental health? What is the status of this man in terms of just general health of that particular person? And I'll say this, this year, we are celebrating Father's Day. Okay. Just to mention that. And I was one of the speakers okay, I can mention?
Yeah, sure, go ahead, briefly.
At Kenya Prison Training College in Ruiru. Okay. And the speakers, most of the speakers we had, they were very keen in talking about fathers in reference to what they are supposed to do to their children, to their parents, to their wives, to society. But majority of those speakers never at any one time talked about fathers as me. What do you need to do as a father? At what time do you need to say, I need to go and get a nice haircut? I need to go buy myself a suit. I need to go out and refresh. I need to go out for a holiday as a dad. At what time do you tell him, hey, you need to take a break and go and celebrate your fatherhood without necessarily attaching it to a responsibility? These guys are not machines. These guys are human beings. As women take time to go out, because we need to, self-love. Okay, we don't have these options for men. So for me, I'll start from that particular point. Even for all these programs that we are doing, we need to agree that even when you're talking to boys, don't talk to boys in terms of you need to protect girls. Talk to boys on what matters boys. That way you are farming that person, you are building that person for him to have an ability or the ability to take care of whatever else that you want that person to take care of.
Okay.
It has to start from that particular person,
okay, so
from inside.
To take care of someone else, you need to take care of yourself.
Exactly.
I get your picture. Kagwe Kibugu, let's talk about this online calls for the uplifting of the boy child who has apparently been hard done by the result of focus, of empowering of girls and women. I know it's not a competition, but is this a concern you hold in terms of the boy child perhaps being sidelined in one way or the other in terms of the conversation when it comes to uplifting and empowerment?
Jesse, I think that's a great question because I definitely do think that there's a imbalance in terms of the way that gender equality is being advocated for. I do feel like we as the boy child are being marginalized, and I feel like that is very evident in the growing number of suicidal cases that we are currently seeing within the country. I believe there was a report that was released maybe a month or two ago by the DCI when they spoke about a rising case in suicide. And I was going through I was doing my research on the back end of that story and other stories to do with suicide in Kenya. And in a couple of the articles, they discussed about how men are 3 times more likely than women in Kenya to commit suicide, young men. And the reasons that they were giving, stemmed from unemployment, came from, taking part in drugs, alcohol. But one of the biggest reasons was the feeling of marginalization within our community. I do feel that if we are to have this conversation about gender equality, which I do believe that we should, I believe that instead of pitting one against the other, we should empower both. Because both sides have flaws. Both sides need working on, and I believe that it's something that we need to have a conversation around. We should not pit one against the other, because what you do at the end of the day is that you suppress, right? And that is something that is being fought on currently, is suppression. So I believe that we need to have an equal conversation about how we can empower both sides of the conversation to be able to have a healthier society. And that way we can have better conversation, and we won't be having issues of, gender-based violence, and so those sort of issues, so to speak. So I believe that we should not put one above the other, but instead we should have a conversation on how we can both empower both to have a level, equal, and happier society.
Okay, well noted. Simon Bevy, let's talk about toxic masculinity. And I also came across something like godly masculinity. As you add your voice to the ongoing conversation, what's the role of religion in this gender progressive ideals?
Well, thank you very much. And just to say, I think for me, it's not whether we should talk about roles and not talk about the health of the man. I think it's not either or, it's and. So we need to speak about both. And I think any program worth its salt will look at the health of the man and then what he does, because they go together. One is an extension of the other. But talking about, sorry, I think I forgot now what you just asked.
Well, I was asking about the toxic masculinity on one side, godly masculinity on the other, the role of religion in all this.
I get it. I remember it now. Thank you. So I think I would say religion is really a bedrock of values. Any religion, what we believe in is what begins to inform what we believe to be our values, character. So religion is very crucial to building and shaping of character. And I think every religion also has a way of defining from a religious perspective what that man and woman is supposed to be. For example, when it comes to Christianity, then the Bible tells us not only about the values and character that we need to uphold as men and as women, but also tells us about the different roles that we need to play and how those reflect on who God is. like the way it says men ought to love their wives like Christ loves the church. So I'm just saying religion is very crucial. And toxic masculinity for me is when, or toxic gender, is when men use their power and their role to hurt and wound others. For example, when men become violent against women or against their own children or against others in society, or use their positions or roles in society to take advantage of others, that's what toxic is. And of course, any religion talking about character and roles and how we need to do that well would condemn what has been.
Well, technical issues right there, but I think his point is across. Religion definitely plays a big part right there. So, Rosemary, as we're having this discussion, we can't just focus on the boys. Women at times often bear the brunt of the violence committed by men who cannot be able to construct in other terms other than domination. So as we're having this conversation in the midst of claims of a patriarchal society and all that, I mean, let's widen the bracket. In terms of a man not being able to take up his roles, it might affect other people as well. So how do we deal with the after effects, the aftershocks, in order to perhaps bring this man in line and also deal with the effects of perhaps his actions?
I would say one of the major reasons that actually causes GBV would be economical reasons. And I find this society very hypocritical. The reason is we have put a lot of money into fighting gender-based violence. A lot of money, both from government and from development partners. Mm-hmm. But just twist that coin and look at major banking institutions. They have what they call financial inclusivity. Most of them have special funds for women, special accounts for women. You understand?
Yeah.
So what happens is that on one end, you raise a reason for increased gender-based violence. And on the other hand, you make sure that reason is propelled on this other side. You get?
Yeah.
There is no one single financial institution that has any package for male gender. None. And 2-3 weeks ago, I contacted 5 different banks. And I wanted to do a session on, under the topic, does the high risk perception bar access to finance on male gender? And none of them accepted to agree to that Zoom. You understand?
Okay.
Yeah? So it therefore means there is any time they have to justify the reasons why they have those special funds or accounts for women, they talk about financial inclusivity. So you wonder, financial inclusivity, does it mean it has to be a woman-focused? And if we continue with the same trend, GBV is not ending anytime soon. However, if you look at it deeper, maybe GBV, it is a source of livelihood for many. People have made millions, people have become rich by propelling and maintaining status quo of these ills in society. What makes you think someone who earns a livelihood fighting GBV will have an intention of seeing it end? Never. Okay. I'll give you another good example, if you allow me, which is more or less the same scenario. And it was a discussion actually I was having with someone yesterday on issues of a simple thing like maybe sanitary pads. Let me just give that example.
Yeah, sure.
And I was telling that person, we have girls in this country who would not go to school because of challenges of menstruation. Wanakaa nyumbani. We have talked about sanitary pads from 1985, tukiwa Beijing. We are in 2021. If you look at it, we have a president, we have a vice president. I'm just telling you people who represent that one girl in Marsabit. A president, a vice president or a deputy president, a senator, a governor, an MP, a ward administrator,
a woman rep,
these goddess and gods of Nyumba Kumi on the ground, all of them put county commissioner, his or her DCCs, and there are very many.
Okay.
All these people cannot afford to give a girl in Marsabit pads, reusable pads that can last for a month or two, and make it a mandatory. They cannot. I'm trying to tell you this. A lot of these problems that we have, GBV, early marriages, sanitary towels, are all things that this society has no intention of ending because it is a livelihood for many.
Okay, that's a different way of looking at it. And we'll come back to how we can break these barriers. Or let's start with that, Kagwe. I mean, all this might be results of social conditioning. We've talked of the cultures, at times tradition, at times the upbringing, even the law is not put in place to perhaps help with the situation. How do we break these barriers at a society level so we ensure that, yes, of course, it's not a competition, but at the end of the day, the rights of the boy child are also upheld as those of the girl child as well?
Jesse, I feel like we are, well, I know that we are an extremely cultural community, and a lot of our morals are built off our cultural setting, not just as a country, but as a nation. Sorry, not as a continent, rather. And I feel like there are certain things that will have to be relooked at. However difficult the conversation is to be had, I think that it is necessary to have these conversations. One of the things that we're seeing right now, like I mentioned earlier, is that we are coming into an extremely liberal generation who are willing to challenge different thought processes, different values, and are willing to actually challenge hierarchy in terms of, you know, we believe X, Y, Z is not the right way to go, and we should go this way. However much there may be conflict in those conversations. I believe that it's extremely important that both sides opinions are actually listened to, and that it does not come from a perspective of me being a younger person and you being an older person, and you having this mentality that because you're older, you assume, right, that this is the way we are thinking because this is how we've always done it, right? So I think now that where information is more available, I think education is a key element in terms of understanding how we can have this conversation, how we can be able to reach a larger demographic in terms of changing these negative facets of our community, such as gender-based violence, which obviously don't come from just financial issues. In psychology, you know, we are taught that some of these issues are a result of what you have seen growing up. So you tend to be attracted to, you know, different households, different types of ladies, depending on your nurture and eventually your nature. So I believe that education is a key element in terms of being able to have these conversations. I believe creating groups, and I believe that more open spaces where judgment is less and acceptance is more, it would be a better way to improve our community and make that step forward.
Okay, judgment less, acceptance should be more. So when we talk about this, Simon Bevy, I mean, you've definitely done some work on this with Man Enough. Is this part of the solution from where you sit as we talk about, you know, creating an even playing field and making sure these men are well equipped to deal with life's responsibilities? Let's talk solution-based.
Well, exactly. I think what we try to do with Man Enough is starting those conversations, beginning to challenge those attitudes that we have had. And those are for the older men, but we also do boys to men. We now call it 412 boys. And we begin that conversation a lot earlier. So we need these conversations packaged in ways that men can get involved in them. So that could be in schools, that needs to happen in churches, that needs to happen in online. That's why we're doing, like Man Enough online. And we are shocked that there are people joining us from all over the continent and really all over the world. So I think men want to see the conversations happen. Women as well need these conversations because it's not about targeting the men only. We need to speak to the entire community, have conversation with the parents as well, so that as we socialize the boys and we are aware of how we might be negatively conditioning them to something that is not going to work well. So we need this kind of conversations at work. Again, I celebrated earlier how many corporates began programs in which they're involving men to talk about some of the issues that are coming up with our masculinity. So I really appreciate that. And secondly, I think we need advocacy. We need to have this, we need voices that say this is happening and this is not right among the boys or among the men or among in the society generally. The kind of advocacy that is not one against another is not we are better than you. It's we need a society that is going to be equal, that is going to play out well, and the relationships are going to be healthy. And a conversation like this in the media is crucial, and for us openly talking about what is affecting our boys and our girls so that we find solutions. So I say, let's multiply many more programs in churches, in workplaces, in different places, and let's have a conversation going on social media, but let's be open to change. I think we can have a lot of conversation, but stick to our what we have known before. Let's be open and to say society has changed. We need to deal with our cultural values. Lastly, what I would say is modeling of leaders. Leaders play a very crucial role. Political leaders, religious leaders, corporate leaders, and generally social leaders. If they begin to lead in these conversations and to challenge these outdated models of thinking, then we're going to see a lot more change pretty quick, especially political leaders, because they seem to have a lot of voice in our nation. Let them model what is good around these conversations and also talk about it. But there is hope, and I think we all need to work together towards that intended future.
Okay, well noted, Bevi. Quickly, just 30 seconds. I mean, talk to the viewers who might sit watching this conversation, but they lack a masculine figure or perhaps an ideal masculine figure to look up to in terms of mentoring the boy child, because we've definitely highlighted that that might be a key area of concern. What would you speak to that mother who's watching and has a young man who's looking for direction?
I would say this: a man is made a man among other men. A man is made a man among other men. We need not have men or you isolated from other men. We get to learn from each other. And so I want to say to all the men, let's reach out for mentorship from others. Let's be in groups where we can learn from each other. And for the young ones, let's all ensure, male parents and female parents, let's ensure our boys are not growing in isolation. That they have mentors around them. Reach out to other men who can do that mentorship, and then let's create models of mentorship in church, in different groups where we are at. Let's ensure that no man walks alone, that every man walks among other men, so they may learn what is right, and whatever challenges they are facing may be encouraged. A man is made a man among other men. Let's not deny the growing young men an opportunity to learn from other men around them. Let's all work towards it.
All right, that's a proper footnote. Rosemary Kinuthia, all said and done, laws and policies need to be aligned with this society values. So in terms of laws and policies, what's your take on what needs to be done?
I think whenever people who have been bestowed with this responsibility should actually, when we talk about laws and policies, there should be an intention to make them fair to both boys and girls. And by that, I mean that there are a lot of documents that have been done for a while now, that when you go through those documents, look at maybe the county gender policy, look at the gender policy, look at even the laws that we have in place. At times when you look at those documents, even East Africa gender policy, just look at those documents. When you read through those documents, you'll actually see there is so much of an emphasis on matters, girls and women, and these are gender policy documents. Remember, we do not live in a vacuum. These are things that govern the way we do things. And if those documents are not right by us, it means even whatever we are talking about, fair playing ground, it is not going to happen because a policy somewhere says different. And it's something that I tell people. I do not advocate for boy-child empowerment. Okay. What I advocate for is a fair playing ground. These dudes can take care of themselves. That's it. Okay. And it's important to note that if you're having problems of men in this society, it can only get worse because they say you take care of the boy child and the man will emerge. So if we do not take care of this boy child, you will never get to see the man you want to see. It is a black and white scenario. In terms of, I know there was a survey that was done, I can't remember when, a National Geographic survey or something, that talked about 45% of children in this country are from single parents. 5.3 of them, probably the parents has passed. Yeah? So it therefore means a whopping 40% are from single mothers, because probably 2 or 3% are from single fathers. Okay. So it therefore means we have a very big challenge, because chances of me teaching my son how to become a man it's unlikely. I remember 3 years ago, my last born came to me. I was doing my dishes in the kitchen, and he comes to me and he says, "Mom, there's something that I want to tell you, but don't turn." And you're thinking, is this a boy who doesn't say much? Yeah. So I'm washing, and since he's told me not to turn, I didn't. So it's like I have 6 girlfriends. And I'm thinking, what?
Where do you
I told you not to turn. So, you know, I think he didn't want to see the kind of reaction I had. Okay. So I was like, what? I'm like, yes. And I need to bring them down to 2. What criteria do I use? I'm a single mom. So have you ever seen you're shaking as you're rubbing the utensils? Because I was so afraid.
Break the utensils.
I was very afraid. Okay. So you can imagine that conversation with your son. So I'm thinking, what do you look for in a girl? I want a girl who, when I visit her place, at least she gives me a drink or food. You can imagine. So I was like, out of these 6, who does that? I'm like, 3 do that, the other 3 don't. I'm like, drop the other 3. So you
Okay, I get you.
So these guys are in dire need of a mentor. Yeah. They are in dire need of having access to other men, because having this conversation with my son, I was actually shaking. Then the next thing I think of, I need to go out with my son and meet some few male friends and hang around. Okay. We get there, and it takes one young man, and they spend hours together talking about girlfriends. I was like, finally. So they need to have access to male gender, to just have these nice conversations, because they're interesting conversations. Just at times you feel uncomfortable having that with them.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for that example. So Kagwe, as we finalize right now, just briefly, when it comes to this generation, relationships, finances, what say you? With the intergenerational gap in place, how do we advocate for this young men generation that we haven't lost focus? We are here and we're still at it.
Yeah, I think it needs to be made, it needs to be put out there that, you know, there are good men out here, you know. There are good men who are ambitious, who want to take care of families, who are ready to take care of families, who are ready to be a part of the conversation and go through the journey of God, and you know, and be able to, you know, create a healthier ecosystem within our society. And I believe that with more conversation, which I keep reiterating, and I have been reiterating, with key conversation and more open spaces and more open doors for us to be able to walk into, to have these conversations, I believe that the future can be bright, but we must have space and we must have acceptance within the society. And hopefully that's a direction that we are going towards. And I would like to urge all the current leaders, you know, who both male and female, to give us the opportunity, you know, to allow us to blossom, allow us to be taught in your ways, and allow us to improve society as we move forward, you know, in the coming years.
Okay, well noted. Gentlemen and lady, many thanks for your time. So inclusion, goodwill, good policies and laws and mentorship will definitely play a part in perhaps making these men ready for the life's responsibilities that lie ahead. I was joined in studio by Kagwe Kibugu, who is a bank and mental health advocate. Thank you so much for your time and your input. Rosemary Kinuthia, it's always a pleasure to have you with us, Director of Partnerships and Programs at the African Boy Child, as well as via way of Zoom, Simon Bevy Pastor, who's the founder of Man Enough. We appreciate your input right here. Let's hope for more discussions like this, because as we've said, it's definitely playing a part in changing the narrative. Allow us to take a short break. When we come back, we engage on matters